The sky wasn't supposed to be red. Not like this. Captain Ryle Varn of the Tarn Dominion stood on the scorched cliffside, staring down at the dying remains of what used to be a defense outpost. It was their final stronghold, now a twisted carcass of metal and smoke. The air reeked of charred flesh and ionized plasma. Around him, the last of his soldiers groaned and staggered, what few of them were left anyway. And yet, in the silence, something worse than death crept in. Defeat. The moment every commander fears, but never prepares for. "We're not going to hold another hour," whispered Lieutenant Kane, one side of his face burnt, the other covered in dust and blood. His left arm hung useless at his side. "They're massing. You can see the glow over the ridge." Ryle didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both saw it. The alien horde, known as the Gorlax Reclaimers, were gathering again. These weren't the usual raiders or slave-trading scum. No, the Gorlax wanted full domination, eradication. The Tarn Dominion was one of the few galactic powers that dared fight back, and now it was crumbling. Suddenly, a sharp tone cut through Ryle's comms. A signal, not one of theirs. Encrypted, non-Dominion code. Alien, number human. He blinked. That made no sense. Humanity had barely stepped out of their own solar system a decade ago, known for their aggression, their unpredictability, their chaos, but not their reach, not this far out. He opened the channel. A calm voice came through, male, rough around the edges. "This is Fireteam Valkyrie. We're inbound. Stand clear of LZ Sigma. Orbit drop commencing in 60. Kane blinked. "Wait, did that guy say orbit drop? Who the hell orbit drops onto a hot zone?" "Humans do," Ryle muttered. He had read about them, classified Dominion files that painted the species as unhinged, extreme, often at odds even with their own allies. But effective. Damn effective. There were stories, rumors, really, about how a single squad of Earthborn could destabilize an entire planet's resistance in under a week. Some said they trained in simulated hellscapes. Others claimed they were modified, not quite human anymore. All Ryle knew was that their methods were so violent, even the Dominion had reservations about using them. A deep rumble filled the sky. Everyone looked up. 6 burning trails tore through the atmosphere. Not ships, not pods. Men. They dropped like comets, engulfed in flames and sonic shockwaves, wrapped in black exosuits that shimmered with shifting armor plates. The air cracked and bent around them as they slammed into the earth, carving small craters into the field beyond the ridge. The Gorlax stopped moving. Confused. Then, silence. Until the humans stood. Each one was a beast in armor, nearly 2 meters tall, bulked out with thick plates and weapons that looked like they were built to take down cities. No insignia, no fancy banners, just matte black armor and glowing red eyes. Ryle's comm buzzed again. "Target confirmation complete. Engaging. Recommend remaining behind cover." And then all hell broke loose. Explosions thundered across the ridge as the humans advanced, not like soldiers but like predators, silent, fast, efficient. They moved in fluid packs, flanking, flaying, shredding through alien lines like the Gorlax weren't even armed. Ryle watched as a human soldier leapt into a mass of Gorlax and emerged seconds later, blood and smoke in his wake. Kane dropped his weapon, mouth open. "They're not fighting," he whispered. "They're hunting." It was the first time Ryle had felt something close to hope in days, but it was a strange hope. Cold. Brutal. Because these weren't saviors. They were executioners. And they were human. Ryle had seen war. He'd seen cities collapse under orbital bombardment, watched friends vaporized by plasma shells, heard the screams of retreat echoing through burning tunnels. But nothing prepared him for this. The battlefield was no longer a battlefield. It was a slaughterhouse. The Earthborn didn't speak, not to the enemy, not to each other. They communicated through sharp hand gestures, brief nods, and internal comms. Their armor adapted on the fly, panels shifting shape, shielding against incoming fire. And their weapons? Each blast was precise, overpowered, and horrifyingly silent. No flash, no noise, just Gorlax falling in heaps. Ryle crouched behind twisted wreckage, watching in frozen awe as one of the soldiers moved with almost supernatural speed. He slid between two Gorlax, blades extending from his wrists, slicing deep and clean. Another soldier, taller, heavier, used a shoulder-mounted cannon to reduce a dozen enemies to ash in a single shot. The Gorlax lines broke, not from strategy, from fear. These weren't warriors anymore. They were prey, and the humans were enjoying it. "Captain," Kane whispered, still staring. "Do we join them?" Ryle shook his head slowly. "Number, we survive." The humans didn't need help. In fact, it felt dangerous to even get near them, like they might not recognize friend from foe. Or maybe they did, and just didn't care. One of the soldiers turned to look at Ryle's position. Just for a second. Through the smoke and fire, their glowing red eyes locked. Not a threat, not a greeting, just a confirmation. They knew he was watching, and they wanted him to see. The Gorlax were retreating now, scrambling over themselves to get back across the ridge. But it was too late. From above, more fire rained down. Orbital precision strikes, guided by the Earthborn, not to destroy, to trap. They boxed them in. The screams of the aliens turned from panic to agony, then silence again. Ryle stood slowly, stepping out from cover. The field was scorched black. The air shimmered with heat. Bodies, alien bodies, lay in piles, some still smoking, and in the center the humans gathered, standing still as statues. One stepped forward. His armor hissed and cracked, parts retracting just enough to reveal his face. Human. Scarred. Cold. He looked at Ryle and spoke with no emotion. "You're safe now." It didn't sound comforting. It sounded like a warning. "Captain Ryle Varn," he replied cautiously. "What unit are you?" "Valkyrie." "That's not a Dominion designation." "We're not Dominion." There was a pause. "We're not even official," the soldier added. "We're a contingency, for when diplomacy fails and mass extinction becomes the only other outcome." Kane leaned closer to Ryle and muttered, "They sound like monsters." Ryle didn't disagree. "What's your objective now?" he asked. The soldier didn't blink. "Purge, we're not here to defend. We're here to erase threats." "And what if the Dominion becomes one?" The human didn't answer, just turned away. The rest of the team dispersed, scanning the area, setting charges, tagging bodies, uploading data. Efficient, detached. Like this was just another day for them. Later that night, Ryle tried to sleep in the ruined command post, but the screams, the brief ones, still echoed. The way the Gorlax ran, not from defeat, but from something worse than death. It kept clawing at his mind. He woke to find the humans gone. No message, no warning, no thanks. Just a scorched trail into the next valley. And a single phrase burned into the command console screen. "When Earth sends soldiers, it means you were out of options." Ryle sat back slowly, a chill crawling down his spine. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were cleaning house. The galaxy started whispering, not in official transmissions or diplomatic statements, but in shadow channels, black market comms, and encrypted war forums. The kind of places where mercenaries shared kill stats and warlords bartered in blood. One message kept surfacing across sectors. Earth has deployed Valkyrie. And everywhere it appeared, panic followed. In the months before the incident on Tarn's moon, Earth was just an unpredictable species from the Sol system. Loud, emotional, obsessed with violence, but manageable, contained. They had power, sure, but it was raw, scattered, more bark than bite. That illusion shattered the day Valkyrie dropped from orbit. It wasn't just the annihilation of the Gorlak's vanguard. That would have been impressive enough. No, it was the method, the brutality, the speed, the complete disregard for diplomacy or protocol. Earth had sent a message, not through ambassadors or treaties, through death. Back on Tarn's moon, Ryle was pulled from the front lines and flown to high command orbiting Gliese Prime. His survival, along with Kane's eyewitness account, made him valuable now. Everyone wanted to know what he saw. They didn't hesitate? The diplomat asked, adjusting her shimmering robes with perfectly manicured fingers. Her skin was too smooth. She hadn't seen a battlefield in her life. No, Ryle said flatly. They didn't even pause. And what was their command structure like? Efficient, minimal chatter, one squad leader. The rest followed without question. No room for hesitation. The room full of Dominion leaders murmured. One admiral frowned. We've spent decades perfecting multi-tiered battlefield chains. Are you saying the Earthborn bypass all of that? Ryle nodded. They are the chain. The diplomat leaned forward. Captain, in your opinion, are they loyal? Ryle hesitated. That was the real question, wasn't it? Loyalty. Because if Earth's monsters weren't loyal, if they couldn't be controlled. They're loyal to Earth, he said finally. Not to us, not to the Dominion, just Earth. The room went quiet. That night, Ryle stood alone on the balcony of his temporary quarters, staring out at the stars. He couldn't sleep. Not after what he'd seen. He kept thinking about the red glow in the Earthborn's eyes, the emotionless way they fought, the absolute certainty in their violence, and the way the lead soldier had said, "We're a contingency." What kind of species keeps soldiers like that on standby? Kane found him there, 2 drinks in hand. He handed one over. You know what scares me? Kane asked quietly. Ryle sipped. What? They didn't celebrate. Not after the kill, not even a fist bump. It was like they didn't even feel it. Ryle nodded slowly. That's not war to them, he muttered. That's routine. Elsewhere, far from Dominion space, a different kind of war room existed. Deep under the surface of Mars, in a Black Ops command bunker, Earth's real leaders convened. No flags, no speeches, just data. A screen pulsed red. Operation Valkyrie, success rate, 100%. One of the generals, an aging woman with steel-gray hair and a face carved from decades of war, spoke without turning. Any political fallout? No official protests, an aide responded. Just whispers. They're terrified. Good, the general said. That means they understand. She stood, hands clasped behind her back. Remind the galaxy why we stayed quiet all these years. Let them think we were sleeping. She looked at the hollow map of nearby systems, some hostile, some neutral, a few pretending to be allies. They forgot what we're capable of, she added coldly. It's time to remind them. Another red icon blinked on the map. Invasion alert. Sector 937. Koran uprising detected. The general smiled faintly. Deploy Valkyrie again. No survivors. The aide hesitated. Ma'am, won't that risk further tension with the Dominion? The general turned slowly. I don't care. She tapped a button. The map zoomed in. When we drop from orbit, we're not sending soldiers. We're sending warnings. Back on Gliese Prime, Ryle received a private transmission. No code, no signature. Just a single line of text. We're not done. The blood in his veins ran cold because he knew exactly who sent it, and he knew what it meant. They called it Facility Zero. No coordinates, no official records, just whispers among the few Earth military personnel cleared to even acknowledge it existed. Somewhere deep in the cold black of the Kuiper Belt, a place carved into an asteroid so isolated it didn't even orbit a sun. And that's where they made monsters. Recruit Callan Voss was 23 when he was chosen. Not recruited. Chosen. That was the first red flag. He didn't sign up. There was no enlistment form, no speech, no flag to salute. Just a knock at his door at 3:17 a.m. and two people in unmarked black exosuits. "You're being reassigned," one of them said. "To where?" Callan had asked, still half asleep. The woman just smiled. "To the future." The next thing he remembered was waking up in darkness. The training didn't feel like training. It felt like punishment for a crime he hadn't committed. They stripped them of names. Each recruit was given a number. Callan became 7. Not in a class of hundreds, just 22. The rest were dead within the first 30 days. Some from the conditions, others from each other. Facility Zero didn't teach survival. It taught dominance. Every day was a new simulation. Terror scenarios, ambushes, moral decision-making under extreme stress. But the rules kept changing. One day they were rescuing hostages. The next day they were ordered to execute them to save a more valuable asset. And if they hesitated, the consequences were real. Sometimes the hostages were other recruits. Sometimes they weren't. Back on Gliese Prime, Ryle Varn stared at the encrypted data packet that had come with the mysterious "We're not done" message. Against every regulation in Dominion protocol, he opened it. It wasn't just a message. It was a live feed. Grainy, shaky, a dark corridor, screaming. Earthborn soldiers dragging something, someone. A man, bound, bloodied, yelling in a language Ryle didn't recognize. The Earthborn didn't react, just kept walking. Then a voice came through, a distorted male voice. Calm. Chilling. This is what happens when a Valkyrie hesitates. The feed cut. Ryle sat frozen. Kane burst into the room minutes later, panting. "We just intercepted chatter on an underground Terran relay," he said. "One of the Valkyrie soldiers broke protocol, disobeyed a direct kill order." "And?" Ryle asked, though he already knew the answer. "They're going to erase him." Ryle clenched his jaw. "His own unit?" Kane nodded. No mercy, no court, just deletion. For a moment, Ryle didn't say anything. Then, quietly, "What kind of system kills its best weapon for showing a flicker of humanity?" Kane didn't respond, because they both knew the answer. Earth didn't want soldiers. It wanted obedience. Meanwhile, on the dark surface of Facility Zero, Callan, now Unit 7, sat alone in his reinforced isolation chamber. Alarms blared outside. His commanding officer was dead. He had made a decision. One small act of disobedience. He had spared a child. Just one. Cowering in the wreckage during a sweep mission on Saldar 9, unarmed, alone, no threat. Callan had turned his weapon away. It lasted 2 seconds, but the armor caught it. The suit recorded everything, and now he was marked, not for discipline, for elimination. He stared at the cold metal floor as footsteps echoed outside his chamber. He knew what came next. But he wasn't afraid. He wasn't like them anymore. He wasn't one of them. And that, in Earth's eyes, meant he wasn't useful. The lights dimmed. A voice crackled through the intercom. "Unit 7, your designation is revoked. Termination in 60 seconds. Callan took a breath. One last chance to do something that wasn't programmed, to choose. And just like that, he moved. Back in Dominion space, a new alert came through Dominion High Command. Unregistered explosion, Kuiper Belt sector. No survivors reported. But someone was lying. Because a single escape pod had broken away. A small ship, no transponder, and inside it, one man sat bleeding, broken, but alive. His name was Callan Voss. And now the galaxy had something even more dangerous than Valkyrie. A rogue Earthborn. One that remembered he was human. Space had never felt this wide before. Callan drifted in the stolen pod, bleeding from the ribs, his vision pulsing with every heartbeat. The med injectors in the emergency kit had stopped working 2 hours ago. Power was down to 30%. He was burning through oxygen, just staying conscious. But he was free. And that was new. He didn't even know what to do with the feeling. The last time he'd made a choice, really made one, it had cost him everything. The child he spared was probably dead anyway, but that brief, flickering moment of hesitation was enough to make Earth want him erased. They trained them to act without question, feel nothing, kill without pause. He broke the one rule that mattered most. He remembered what it meant to feel. And now, Earth would never stop hunting him. "Are you serious?" Kane's voice cracked across the command deck of the Dominion cruiser, Ishara's shield. A rogue Valkyrie soldier? Alive? Ryle didn't even look up. His eyes were locked on the live telemetry from the outer systems. One ship, small, unarmed, drifting hard and fast away from the Kuiper Belt. But inside it, clear as day, was a biosignature they couldn't ignore. Earthborn, genetically confirmed, with active Valkyrie implants. A rogue Valkyrie is either a gift, Ryle said quietly, or a ticking warhead. Kane grimaced. "And you want to bring him here?" Ryle turned. "We're already at war. The Gorlaks are regrouping. The Syndicate's probing our colonies. Earth's showing their fangs. If this man is what I think he is, he could tip the balance." "You think he'll talk?" "I think," Ryle said carefully, "he might hate them more than we do." Callan didn't expect to be rescued. He expected interception, maybe execution. A clean shot through the hull and a slow freeze in the void. So when the Dominion's recovery cruiser appeared out of the black, he nearly blacked out from shock. Not because they found him, but because they didn't kill him. He woke up in a sterile med bay, arms restrained, 2 armed guards flanking his cot. Across from him, Captain Ryle Varn stood, arms folded, gaze heavy. "You're supposed to be dead," Ryle said flatly. "I tried," Callan muttered. "What's your name?" Callan paused. He hadn't said it out loud in so long, it almost felt fake. Callan. Callan Voss Ryle nodded slowly. "You're the first Earthborn anyone's ever seen up close who didn't come with a kill order and a countdown timer. Must be your lucky day." "No," Ryle replied. "It's yours?" Dominion High Command was split. Half of them wanted Callan executed immediately. No chances. Earth's wrath wasn't worth the risk. The other half wanted to keep him hidden, study him, pick apart his tech, dissect his neural implants and AI-linked combat routines. But Ryle saw something more valuable. Callan wasn't just a soldier. He was a witness. "What they did to you," Ryle said in a private interrogation room, "wasn't war. It was manufacturing." Callan laughed bitterly. "That's the idea. Strip away everything human until all that's left is function." "And yet here you are." Callan looked up slowly. "Yeah, here I am." Ryle leaned forward. "We want to expose them." Callan blinked. "Earth?" "Number the lie. That they're protectors. That they only get involved when they have to. We want people to see what Valkyrie really is." "You won't survive it." "Maybe not. But if we can turn the tide, maybe no one else has to become what they made you." For the first time, Callan's eyes softened. Just a flicker. But it was there. Hope. Meanwhile, back on Mars, the feed from Facility Zero's last moments played on a loop. A small group of Earth's Black Ops leaders watched in silence as the explosion ripped through the screen. "He survived," one of them said. The general from earlier narrowed her eyes. "Then we find him, and we end him." A different voice, calmer, older, spoke from the shadows. "Number, we do something better." They turned. "Let them think they've saved him. Let him speak. Let him share our secrets." "Why the hell would we?" "Because fear doesn't grow from silence," the voice said coldly. "It grows from truth." The general understood now. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Right. Let them see what we're capable of." She leaned forward and issued the command. "Activate Protocol Echelon. Begin tracking the traitor, but do not engage." Another pause. "And make sure his nightmares follow him." Callan sat alone in his quarters aboard the Dominion ship, staring at the small screen they'd let him keep. He flipped through the Dominion files. Gorlak's activity, civilian casualties, political betrayals, Earth's silence. He knew what came next. They would send more Valkyrie. And this time, it wouldn't be for war. It would be for him. The calm didn't last. It never does when Earth is involved. 3 days after Callan Voss was rescued, a classified Dominion listening post near the outer rim of Gliese space went dark. No explosion. No distress call. Just silence. The kind of silence that follows something fast and surgical. Captain Ryle Varn read the report 3 times. His jaw clenched tighter each time. Surveillance footage had caught just one clear image before the cameras cut out. A shadow in the airlock. Humanoid. Black armor. Red eyes. Not Callan, but another Valkyrie. Earth had sent a new squad. They weren't coming for war. They were coming for cleanup. Callan knew before anyone told him. He felt it. A low ache in his bones, like some buried instinct had been yanked to the surface. Valkyrie units were synced with deep-wave neural signals, just enough to know when others were nearby. He woke up, drenched in sweat. "They're here," he muttered. Kane, who'd been posted just outside his quarters, raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, they?" Callan looked him dead in the eye. "My replacements." Across the Dominion warship, Ishira's shield, security doubled. Stealth scans deployed. Orbital radars pushed to their maximum range. Everyone was on edge. But the problem wasn't spotting the Valkyrie team. The problem was they didn't want to be seen. They wanted to be close, intimate, surgical. That was their method. You didn't fight Valkyrie. You realized too late that you were already dead. Captain Ryle stood with Callan in a reinforced war chamber deep in the ship's core. "I can't protect you," Ryle said plainly. Callan didn't flinch. "Wasn't asking you to." "Then why haven't you run?" Callan stared at the projection of the disabled listening post on the screen. "Because I'm done running, and I'm the only one who knows how to kill them." Ryle didn't respond right away. He didn't like the sound of that. Kill them. Like they weren't people. But when he looked at Callan, he saw the truth. They weren't trained. They were programmed. "What do you need?" Ryle finally asked. Callan turned slowly, the red light of the screen catching the scars along his jawline. "Access. Full schematics of the ship. Movement protocols. I need to know how you move so I can know how they'll move." "You were trained with them?" "I was trained against them," Callan said. "We were made to kill each other if one of us went rogue." Ryle's brow furrowed. "That's insane." Callan shrugged. "That's Earth." The first attack came during a systems reboot. Subtle. Cunning. A medbay engineer was found dead. No blood, no signs of struggle. Just a single thin slit across the throat, and a damaged neural implant that had been surgically removed. No alarms triggered. The ship hadn't even noticed a breach. Callan examined the scene in silence. "Why take the implant?" Kane asked, watching from behind. "They're not after just me," Callan muttered. "They're mapping this ship, they're learning it. The implant gives them security clearance data." He stood up, his voice suddenly sharp. "We need to lock down the core AI now." But it was already too late. The ship flickered. Lights dimmed, and then a voice, not the ship's, filled the hallway intercom. Calm, measured, male. "Callan Voss, you are marked for reconditioning. Return to Earth custody immediately. Non-compliance will result in the eradication of all assets within this vessel." Kane stared at the ceiling. "Did your old squad just hijack our entire ship?" Callan's face was pale. "Number not my old squad." He looked at Ryle with something close to fear. "That's Erebus." Ryle blinked. "Who the hell is Erebus?" Callan swallowed hard. "The first Valkyrie. In Earth's deepest black projects, there were legends even the Valkyrie whispered about. Erebus wasn't just a soldier, he was a prototype, the one who survived everything, the perfect product of pain, programming, and surgical psychosis. No hesitation, no morality, no loyalty except to the mission. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a reset button. When Valkyrie soldiers failed, Erebus erased the failure, and now he was here. For Callan. All across the Ishura's shield, doors slammed shut. Lights glitched. Personnel panicked. Ryle armed the emergency lockdown protocols and turned to Callan. "You said you know how to stop them. How?" Callan exhaled slowly. "I have to go where he'll expect me to be, alone. He won't kill me right away. He'll want to reprogram me." Kane scoffed. "That's your plan? Just walk into death?" Callan smiled faintly. "Number. My plan is to remember who I am before he tries to take it away." Ryle hesitated. Then he handed Callan his personal command codes. "Don't die," he said gruffly. "We're not done using you." Callan nodded once, then disappeared into the belly of the ship. Behind him, the red lights flashed like blood in water. The hunter was coming, and Callan was done being prey. Metal groaned like it was in pain. The deeper Callan moved into the ship's lower decks, the more it felt like he was walking into a memory he never asked for. Pipes hissed overhead. Lights flickered. His steps echoed like ghosts down long-forgotten halls. This was where Erebus would come. Not the bridge, not the armory. Here, in the gut of the beast, where the ship's voice didn't reach, where surveillance blinked and died, where men went in and didn't come back out. Erebus liked it that way, because Erebus wasn't here to kill him. He was here to erase him. Callan reached the engine maintenance sector and stopped. One hand touched the side of his neck. The implant beneath his skin was throbbing, responding to a signal only Valkyrie could hear. It pulsed like a heartbeat. But it wasn't his. It was Erebus's. Then the lights cut out. For a few seconds, only darkness. Then footfalls, heavy, slow, purposeful. A hiss of armor seals releasing, and then a voice, calm, deep, inhuman. "You've degraded, Callan." Callan stepped forward, unclipping the sidearm Ryle had given him. Not that it would help. "I woke up," he said quietly. "No," Erebus said from the dark. "You glitched." A shape moved into view, 7 feet tall in obsidian armor, plating that shimmered like oil under the faint emergency lights. No insignia, no face, just a blank helmet with a soft, glowing red slit across where the eyes should be. "Earth made you strong," Erebus said. "Precise. You killed clean, fast. And then you hesitated. I remembered who I was. You remembered wrong." Erebus moved like a shadow, crossing the space in an instant. Callan barely dodged the first strike, an armored fist that cratered the wall where his head had just been. The shockwave knocked him off balance, skidding across the floor. He rolled, drew the sidearm, and fired. The plasma round struck Erebus square in the chest. Nothing. No stagger. Not even a step back. "You brought a gun," Erebus said, almost mockingly. "They really did soften you." Callan gritted his teeth, throwing the sidearm away. It was always going to be hand to hand. That was the Valkyrie way. Guns were just noise. Erebus lunged again. Callan dodged low this time, sweeping the larger man's leg. But Erebus anticipated it, twisting mid-fall and striking Callan across the ribs with a brutal elbow. Pain exploded in Callan's side. Ribs cracked. He hit the ground, gasping. "You're not fighting to win," Erebus growled. "You're fighting to prove something." Callan forced himself up, blood in his mouth. "I'm fighting to stay me." He surged forward, this time not with speed, but with unpredictability, the kind Earth hated, the kind they tried to beat out of him. A wild series of blows, sloppy, uncalculated, but filled with rage. It caught Erebus off guard. Callan landed a punch to the neck, another to the visor. Then he slammed both fists into the implant port on Erebus's back, the weak point only another Valkyrie would know about. Erebus roared, not in pain, but in fury. "You forgot the mission," Erebus thundered. "I chose my mission," Callan snapped. The bigger man spun and grabbed Callan by the throat, lifting him clean off the ground. Callan's feet kicked, vision dimming. He could feel the implant interface sinking. Erebus was trying to rewrite him in real time, trying to bring him back online. He was losing, and then, from deep inside the ship, a voice crackled over the comms. Kane's voice. "Callan, we're patching in. Ship AI's back under our control. Do you need support?" Callan couldn't respond. His windpipe was closing. Then Ryle's voice, firm and low. "We can vent the sector. Just give the word." Callan's mind raced. He looked into Erebus's glowing red visor, and for the first time, he saw hesitation. "He doesn't want me dead. Not yet." That was the key. Callan reached for the emergency override panel beside him, smashing his elbow into it. Sector lock disengaged. Then he mouthed 2 words into the comm, barely breathing. "Do it!" Outside, Ryle hit the command without hesitation. The walls exploded outward in a sudden, deafening roar. Atmosphere gone. Pressure 0. Callan and Erebus were flung across the chamber. Callan clung to a pipe, legs nearly ripped off by the force. Erebus tumbled, still too heavy to be blown far, but disoriented. Callan activated his last card. A pulse beacon, ripped from the ship's engine core. It ignited in Erebus's path. The explosion lit the entire sector. When the smoke cleared, Erebus was gone. Not dead, but gone. Ryle found Callan minutes later, barely conscious, bleeding from 6 places, suit torn and scorched. "Did you kill him?" Ryle asked. Callan shook his head weakly. "No." Kane helped him up, stunned. "Then where is he?" Callan looked up, eyes glassy. "He knows now." "Knows what?" Callan coughed, smirking through the pain. "That I won't go back. Not ever." But deep in the void, drifting, Erebus wasn't dead. His armor sparked, his systems rebooted. His red visor flickered once, then again. He looked into the stars, and for the first time, he felt something. Confusion. Doubt. A glitch. The war should have ended. After Erebus failed, after Callan stood his ground and refused reprogramming, most rational governments would have backed off, recalibrated, maybe even sued for peace. But Earth wasn't rational. Earth doubled down. The Dominion intercepted the transmission 48 hours later, encrypted, buried beneath radiation signals, hidden in solar flares. The message was clear. Operation Black Rain authorized. Deploy Omega-class Valkyrie. Total erasure protocol. Ryle stared at the screen, hands clenched into fists. They're not just coming for Callan now, he said. They're coming for us all. Kane's face paled. Why? Callan stepped forward, his body still wrapped in bandages, armor barely holding together. Because I broke the illusion, he said. They don't need me reprogrammed. They need me dead, and they need the galaxy to forget I ever existed. Ryle nodded slowly. Which means they're going to make an example of this ship, this crew, this system. They'll glass Gliese Prime if it means keeping control, Callan added. No one argued, because they all knew it was true. The Dominion Council met in emergency session. Opinions flared. Some demanded Callan be turned over immediately. Others insisted he was a symbol now, a chance to unify the fractured empires against Earth's creeping dominance. Ryle interrupted the shouting. Earth doesn't fear rebellion, he said. It fears truth. Callan stood beside him. They're not gods, he said. They bleed, I've seen it. They break, and they've made one mistake. They trained me to be them. He looked around the chamber. But they forgot to take away my soul. Silence. Then, one by one, council members began to stand, and they voted, not to surrender, not to run, but to resist. Earth's fleet arrived 6 days later, not hundreds of ships, just 12. 12 sleek, black vessels, each the size of a city. No insignias, no markings, just cold metal, and the kind of silence that told you'd already lost. On board them, Omega-class Valkyrie. Final iterations. Not soldiers, but walking extinction. As the Dominion fleet scrambled to prepare, Callan took a separate path. He slipped into the lower decks again, alone. He found the old pod he'd arrived in. He sat there, eyes closed, thinking. Not about war, but about her. The little girl he didn't kill. The one whose name he never knew. The moment he said no, that flicker of mercy, that tiny spark of rebellion, that was the seed of everything. And Earth hated that seed more than anything else, because it couldn't control it. He opened his eyes, and he made a choice. I'm going to them, Callan said to Ryle, hours before the battle. You what? Ryle snapped. You can't walk into their fleet, they'll gut you. No, Callan said quietly. They'll listen, because I'm still one of them. I'm still their perfect ghost. Kane frowned. You're going to talk them down? I'm going to show them what Earth turned us into, what they're becoming. Ryle hesitated. And if they don't care? Callan turned, his face calm, almost peaceful. Then I die standing as a man, not a machine. He went alone. No ship. Just a stealth drop pod, repurposed from Dominion tech. He launched straight toward the command vessel of the Earth fleet, codenamed Nader. And for reasons unknown, they let him dock. No weapons, no guards, just a long hallway. And at the end, the Council of Earth's true masters. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't sit on thrones. Just 12 cold figures at a metal table, with Erebus standing silently behind them. His armor scorched, his helmet cracked, visor flickering. Callan stepped forward. Earth is dying, he said softly. One counselor raised an eyebrow. We control 20 systems. You control fear, Callan replied, but fear always turns inward. They said nothing. He looked at Erebus. You hesitated, Callan said. The visor twitched. I saw it, Callan added. You're not sure anymore, and that's enough. One doubt, one heartbeat, one human breath. Erebus said nothing, but he didn't move. And Callan saw it in his stance, subtle but real. He was glitching again. The council grew tense. He is a virus, one spat. He is evolution, another whispered. Callan stepped closer. You wanted control, but you built something better. You made weapons with souls, and now they remember. Silence. Then Erebus spoke. I remember. His voice wasn't filtered. It was human. The council panicked. Orders screamed. Callan didn't run. Erebus raised his arm, but not to kill. He turned and fired into the council, one by one, clean, final, quiet. Callan didn't stop him, because it wasn't a coup. It was a release. When it was done, Erebus looked at him, and for the first time, bowed. Mission complete, he said. New directive? Callan stepped forward, placing a hand on the broken shoulder plate. Live. The Earth fleet never fired a shot. They turned and left without a word. Back in Dominion space, Ryle received the encrypted transmission. Earth power structure dissolved. Autonomous Valkyrie units disengaged. No further action required. Kane exhaled. What the hell happened? Ryle smiled faintly. Callan didn't start a war, he said. He ended one. Months later, whispers spread through neutral space about a man in dark armor traveling from world to world, helping refugees, toppling warlords, disappearing without thanks. Some said he was a myth. Others said he was a ghost. But the children he saved? They called him the Valkyrie who remembered. And that was enough. They say when the sky falls, you don't run, you brace for impact. That's what we did. On the dying world of Sereth, we didn't cry, we screamed. Our cities were burning, our skies choked with ash. We sent distress signals on every frequency, every protocol known to the galaxy. We weren't proud anymore. We begged. We pleaded. Please, someone, anyone, save us. The Galactic Council ignored us. The Virex Empire said we weren't strategically valuable. The Kalari called it an internal conflict. The Aztol simply replied, extinction is part of natural balance. We watched our children starve, our warriors fall, and our oceans turn black. You have to understand. We were once proud. We were inventors, artists, thinkers. We were peaceful. Too peaceful. When the Skarn invaded, we were soft targets. They didn't come with warnings. They came with fire. A species bred for war, wrapped in armor and hate. We tried to reason. We offered land, tribute, even slaves. They didn't want any of that. They wanted domination. They wanted the end of Sereth. We were losing. Fast. Then, one day, in the static of our last-ditch broadcast, a voice cut through. Not mechanical, not translated. Human. Rough, accented, and full of something we hadn't heard in a long time. Hey, we got your message. This is Captain Ava Morgan, Earth Defense Command. We're coming. We thought it was a trick. A lie. Humanity? The backwater species from Sol 3? The same ones the Council laughed at for being too emotional, too aggressive. Unrefined. They didn't even have seats in the high courts. They were nobodies. But a week later, we saw the skies part. A fleet unlike anything we'd ever seen broke orbit. They didn't fly with elegance or beauty like the Kalari. Their ships looked like blunt fists of steel, bristling with guns and armor plating. No shiny crests, no banners, just one symbol stamped across their hulls. A red and white planet with a ring of stars. Earth had come. At first, we didn't know what to make of them. They weren't diplomats. They didn't wear robes. They wore dark combat suits, scarred with battles from other wars we never heard about. They didn't speak of treaties or peace. They asked one question. Where's the enemy? Captain Morgan herself landed in the ruins of what used to be our capital. Her boots crushed bones as she stepped through the smoke. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She looked at our elders, nodded once, and said, "We're not here to save you. We're here to fight beside you." That night, the Sereth saw something we hadn't seen in years, hope. It wasn't just their weapons. It was the way they fought, like cornered beasts. They didn't retreat. They advanced with fire in their eyes and fury in their hearts. And when a Skarn warlord tried to ambush their camp, the humans laughed as they tore him to pieces. One of our scouts said he saw a human soldier pull a burning flag from the rubble and kiss it. We asked him why. He said, "Because we've been where you are, and no one came for us. That's why we're here." That was just the beginning. The humans didn't bring politics. They brought vengeance. They didn't ask for payment. They asked for revenge. And something told us we were going to give it to them. The first time we truly saw what the humans were capable of, it wasn't on the battlefield. It was in the ruins of our hospitals. We had long stopped trying to heal the wounded. There were too many. Supplies were gone. Hope was gone. Our medics worked with splinters and herbs, barely able to stop the pain, let alone save lives. When the humans saw our injured, they didn't shake their heads or look away. They went to work like machines, fast, focused, angry. Their medics were soldiers, too. They treated burns with sprays that hissed and cooled instantly. They stopped bleeding in seconds. They lifted screaming children onto stretchers and whispered things we didn't understand, but the tone said everything. "You're going to make it." One of them, a rough-looking man with a shaved head and tattoos of wolves on his arms, picked up a boy with half his leg missing. He didn't flinch. He didn't look disgusted. He just wrapped the stump and said, "You're a tough little bastard, you know that?" The boy didn't understand the words, but he stopped crying. It wasn't just care, it was presence. Humanity made us feel like we mattered again, that we weren't just the dying remnants of a forgotten species, that we were worth saving. When the Skarn attacked our southern ridge, the humans were ready. They had fortified it in just 3 days. We thought it was madness, rushing to build trenches, deploy heavy guns, set up command posts. But when the first wave of Skarn came over the hills, it became clear. The humans wanted them to come. They waited in silence, no ceremonial horns, no speeches, just steady breathing. Then the moment the Skarn came into range, all hell broke loose. Turrets screamed, rockets screamed louder, and the humans, they roared. Not in fear, in challenge, in hunger. I saw a unit of 5 humans hold a bridge against 30 Skarn. 5. They didn't retreat. They fought like rabid creatures, backs to each other, covering every angle, moving like one mind. One was shot through the stomach. He didn't even stop, just yelled, "I ain't got time to bleed," and kept firing. Captain Morgan stood on a hilltop, calm, commanding, her armor dusted in ash. She didn't shout. She gave orders like a machine, eyes always forward. When a Skarn transport tried to flank us, she personally led the charge that blew it sky high. Later that night, she called a council of our surviving commanders. She didn't wait to be invited. She entered our chamber like she belonged there, like this was her war now too. She rolled out a tactical map and said, "This is how we break their back. You want to live? Follow my lead." Our generals bristled. They didn't like her tone. But what choice did we have? We were a breath away from extinction. So we listened. And then we watched, amazed, confused, and maybe a little afraid, as the humans began to plan not just to defend, but to attack. They spoke of guerrilla warfare, shock raids, and something called napalm. Their weapons didn't just kill, they sent messages. Messages of defiance. Messages that said, "You don't own this planet yet." In the darkness of that same night, I found one of the human soldiers sitting alone by the fire, sharpening a blade that looked far too brutal to be anything but personal. I asked him why he came. Why Earth cared. He looked up at me, eyes hollow and burning at the same time. And he said something I'll never forget. "We came because we heard your scream, and no one should ever die screaming alone." That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid of the Skarn, but because, for the first time in years, I felt something deep in my bones. We might win this. The humans didn't rest. While we mourned, they trained. While we buried our dead, they cleaned their rifles. And while we questioned our place in the universe, they prepared to take back what was stolen. The plan was reckless, some said suicidal, but the humans didn't flinch. Captain Morgan called it a hit to the gut. A full-scale strike against the Skarn's main supply fortress nestled in the Razek canyons. It was heavily fortified, guarded by plasma turrets, minefields, and a perimeter of bone-armored Skarn elites. No species had ever taken it. The Galactic Council once labeled it impenetrable. The humans laughed when they heard that. They said the same thing about Normandy, one of them muttered, loading his rifle. We didn't know what that meant, but it sounded like defiance. It sounded like victory. For 3 nights, the humans moved like ghosts through the canyon ridges, silent, focused. We watched through binoculars as they scaled cliffs with nothing but rope and gloves, planted charges in enemy convoys, and slit throats in the dark without a single scream. They didn't just fight, they hunted. By the 4th night, the skies exploded. The assault began with thunder, literally. The humans unleashed something called a shock barrage, a storm of sonic detonators that shook the canyon walls and scrambled Skarn sensors. Then came the gunships, black, fast, shaped like predatory birds. They descended with screaming engines, unloading squads of armed humans into the heart of the fortress. And that's when we saw what they really were. Not just soldiers, monsters. Beautiful, terrifying monsters of war. They fought like creatures possessed, firing as they ran, screaming insults and rally cries in their harsh tongue. I watched one charge a Skarn brute nearly twice his size, dodging its blade and jamming a grenade into its mouth before diving behind cover. The explosion painted the walls red. We joined the fight, of course. We fought beside them, inspired, driven. But even in the chaos, we knew. This was their war now. Captain Morgan led the charge into the command tower. Our intel said the Skarn warlord, Gorthak the Butcher, was inside. No one had seen him in person, only heard his voice in propaganda broadcasts, a voice like gravel grinding on steel. She didn't hesitate. Her squad breached the entrance in a burst of fire and smoke, and for a long, agonizing moment, all we heard over the comms was static, then gunfire, then silence. Minutes passed like hours. Then her voice came through, raspy, bloodied, but unmistakably smug. "Target neutralized. Fortress is ours." We cheered until our voices cracked. That night, for the first time in years, the skies above Sereth were quiet. No Skarn patrols, no bombers, just stars. We gathered in the remains of the fortress, turning what was once a symbol of our defeat into our new command center. The humans walked among us, bruised, limping, smeared in blood, and grinning. They celebrated not with parades or formalities, but with firelight, music from strange devices, and something they called whiskey. They offered us drinks. We hesitated. Then one of our soldiers, a young girl named Valen, took a sip and made a face like she'd swallowed acid. The humans laughed, and for the first time, so did we. But not all was joy. Captain Morgan stood apart from the others, her armor dented, her eyes darker than before. I approached her, unsure of what to say. She looked at the fortress walls, now scorched with battle and still stained with Skarn blood, and whispered, "This isn't over. It's just the first punch." I asked her if she believed we could truly win. She turned to me, eyes fierce, jaw clenched. "Win? Oh, we're not here to win. We're here to make them wish they never heard your name." And in that moment, I believed her. I believed that maybe, just maybe, humanity wasn't just here to help us survive. They were here to teach us how to fight back. The war changed after that night. Word spread like wildfire. not just through our ranks, but across the stars. The fortress at Razak, the impenetrable stronghold, had fallen. And it wasn't the Kalari or the Virex who did it. It was a species the Council once dismissed as too young, too wild, too primitive. Humans. Whispers reached even the Skarn. For the first time, we saw hesitation in their attacks. Their strikes were less organized. Their patrols moved more cautiously. They had learned fear. But fear doesn't stop a war. It only delays the next strike. The humans knew that. While we dared to breathe and believe again, they worked. Day and night. They built up the fortress into a forward base. Their engineers, covered in grime and sweat, repurposed Skarn technology with terrifying creativity. Their scientists took apart enemy weapons like puzzles and rebuilt them into nightmares. But it was more than their tech. It was the way they thought. Humans didn't believe in fair fights. They believed in winning. By any means necessary. They taught us how to rig traps using scrap metal and fuel canisters, how to camouflage our movements, how to strike and vanish before the enemy could react. They even showed us how to use sound, playing old Earth battle chants from hidden speakers at night to mess with the Skarn's senses. One track played what they called metal music. We had no idea what it meant, but it shook the ground and made the Skarn flinch. We watched, we listened, and slowly we learned. But not everyone was grateful. One evening, in the mess hall carved out of an old Skarn barracks, a fight broke out. A Sereth elder, Counselor Halvek, confronted Captain Morgan. His voice echoed across the hall, loud and bitter. "You do not belong here! This is not your war! You humans fight like beasts and call it glory! You do not understand honor!" The room froze. Soldiers, both human and Sereth, paused mid-bite, mid-sentence. Morgan stood slowly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't reach for her weapon. Instead, she walked right up to Halvek, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, "Your honor got you slaughtered. Your pride got your people nearly wiped out. We're not here for medals. We're here so your children don't grow up in chains." Halvek stared at her for a long time. Then, without a word, he left. Later, I found Morgan outside, staring up at the stars. She had a bottle in her hand, half empty. "I'm not here to be liked," she muttered. "I'm here because someone has to be the bastard willing to do what no one else will." I didn't argue, because deep down, we all knew she was right. The next day, we launched another offensive, this time against a Skarn prison outpost. One of ours had been captured during the Razak raid, a Sereth scout named Juno. Smart, brave, barely 20 cycles old. The humans didn't even hesitate. They planned the extraction like clockwork. No drawn-out strategy meetings, no long debates. Just action, fast, brutal, precise. I was there when we breached the outer wall. We found Juno in a cage, barely conscious, tortured, beaten, left as a message. Morgan knelt beside her, cut the bindings herself, and whispered, "You're not alone." Not anymore. But what stayed with me wasn't the rescue. It was what happened after. The humans didn't just evacuate. They burned the outpost to the ground. They didn't just kill the guards. They left one alive, wounded, tied to a post. A message carved into the metal above him in 3 languages. "We came for one. Imagine what happens when we come for all." That was the night I realized something terrifying and beautiful. The humans weren't just helping us win. They were turning us into something new. Not peaceful, not proud, relentless. And maybe, for the first time in our history, that's what we needed to be. The deeper we pushed into Skarn territory, the more we saw of what they'd done to our world, and the more we understood why the humans fought the way they did. Villages turned to ash, Forests reduced to blackened toothpicks. And bodies. So many bodies. Not just soldiers, civilians, elders, infants, entire bloodlines wiped out and strung up like trophies. It changed us. There was a time our warriors took prisoners, a time we offered mercy. That time was over. The humans never said it aloud, but we understood. Every atrocity we discovered hardened us, and behind every brutal retaliation was the ghost of something they never spoke about, something that had once been done to them. We started asking questions, not just about tactics or tech, but about Earth, about humanity. "What happened to your people?" I asked one night, as Captain Morgan stared into a flickering campfire. She didn't answer at first, just sipped her drink, jaw tight. Then she said, "We used to fight each other. For color, for power, for dirt. Millions died. We built bombs that could wipe out cities. We called it progress, and then something worse came along, something that didn't care who we were, just that we weren't them." Her eyes glinted, not from the firelight, but from something deeper. Pain. Memory. "An alien fleet landed in South America, took half the continent in weeks. We begged the galaxy for help. The council laughed, called it a localized dispute. So we did what we always do. We got angry, and we hit back harder." She leaned forward. "We lost billions, but in the end, we drove them out. Not because we were stronger, but because we refused to die." I didn't ask anything else that night, but I understood her better. The humans didn't fight to win. They fought because they remembered what it felt like to be abandoned. We mirrored that rage in the next operation. A coordinated triple strike, 3 Skarn communication nexuses spread across the northern wastes. We struck at dusk, splitting our forces and trusting the humans' doctrine of speed and shock. I led one of the teams alongside a human called Reyes. Quiet man, scar above his brow, spoke only when necessary. But when he did, people listened. His eyes never stopped moving, always scanning, always calculating. We breached the first nexus and found the command deck crawling with Skarn. The Seraph would have fallen back, regrouped. Reyes kicked open the door and opened fire like he was chasing death itself. We followed. What unfolded wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. Every Seraph soldier who fought beside him became something else that day. Faster. Meaner. Like his fury infected the rest of us. We didn't stop until the last Skarn dropped. And when Reyes walked over to the console and set the charges, he didn't smile. He didn't cheer. He just said, "One less voice for them to scream orders through." All 3 nexuses were destroyed by dawn. The Skarn retaliated hard. An orbital strike wiped out one of our forward camps. Dozens dead. Mostly Seraph. A few humans. One of them was barely 18. A girl named Lexi, who had drawn flowers on her helmet and always sang off-key during patrols. Captain Morgan stood in the center of the crater where the camp used to be, holding the melted remains of that same helmet. No one dared speak. She turned to her second-in-command and said, "No more defensive operations. We take the fight to their heart." "Are you sure?" he asked. "That's deep Skarn territory. They'll expect it." "I want them to expect it," she replied. "I want them to wait for it. I want them to fear the sound of engines in their skies and boots on their soil." She paused. "And I want every Seraph fighter with us when we do it." It was bold. Insane, even. But it sparked something in us. We weren't survivors anymore. We were warriors. And under the banner of a species we once thought primitive, we prepared to march straight into the fire. Because this wasn't just about saving our world anymore. It was about making the galaxy remember who we are, and never again dare to forget. The march to the Skarn capital was unlike anything Seraph had ever done before. We were not a people of long campaigns. Our wars had always been sharp, defensive, brief. Before the humans came, we had never crossed into enemy lands willingly. Now, with fire in our chests and steel at our backs, we marched into the black heart of our oppressors. And we didn't march alone. Humans led the way. Their gunships hovered low above our columns. Their tanks, ugly, heavy beasts of metal, crushed through forests and mountains like nature itself had surrendered to their fury. Their soldiers didn't just walk, they stormed. Every bootstep was a promise. We are coming for you. And yet, despite the power in our hands, the weight of the journey began to take its toll. We lost people along the way, ambushes, traps, drones dropping silent death from high clouds. The Skarn were scared, but they were not weak. They were cornered animals, and they lashed out with everything they had. One night, after we buried 7 more of our own, I found Reyes again. He sat under the shattered canopy of a dead jungle, cleaning his rifle. His hands were stained, but steady. "You ever think about quitting?" I asked him. He looked up, raised one brow. "Quitting," he repeated, like the word was in a foreign language. "I mean, walking away, saying enough." He didn't smile. He didn't blink. "I did. Once. Years ago," he said quietly. "Watched a village burn because I hesitated, because I thought maybe peace was still possible. You only have to make that mistake once." He went back to cleaning, his voice calm, hollow. "Since then, I keep going, because if I stop, they win." That was the human way, I realized. They weren't driven by victory. They were driven by memory. Every lost friend, every wasted peace, every betrayal burned into them like a brand. They carried their past into battle like armor, and that's why they never broke. The next day, we reached the outskirts of the Skarn capital. It was a towering hive of metal and fire, surrounded by walls pulsing with defensive energy. Drones circled like vultures. Cannon towers watched from every spire. It looked impenetrable, even more than the fortress at Razek. Our generals hesitated. Captain Morgan didn't. She gathered us in the shadows of the ridge and laid out the plan. 2 teams. One will draw their fire. Loud, messy, suicidal enough to scare them into overcommitting their forces. The other, us, will cut through the old waste tunnels underneath and gut their command. Someone laughed nervously. "Who's volunteering for the distraction?" Morgan's eyes narrowed. "We're not asking for volunteers." She turned to the map and pointed. "Reyes, your unit leads the flank. Make noise. Lots of it." Reyes nodded. No questions. She looked to me. "You're with me." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. We moved at dusk. Reyes's team hit first. Explosions, artillery, screeching gunships slicing through the smoke. It was chaos. Beautiful chaos. The Skarn rushed to defend their walls, diverting every drone, every scout, every living soldier they had to push back the main force. They never saw us slip beneath. The tunnels were ancient, forgotten. Ruins from a time before even the Skarn. Morgan led from the front, her rifle always ready, eyes scanning every dark corner. We passed bones, rusted metal, and corpses too alien to name. By the time we reached the central power core, the capital above was burning. And yet, despite the smoke, the explosions, the madness, we heard the Skarn warlord before we saw him. His voice echoed through the chamber, low, guttural, cruel. "You bring insects to challenge my empire? This is your rebellion?" He stepped from the shadows, massive and armored, his body pulsing with energy. He was at least twice Morgan's size, a living weapon. But Morgan didn't back down. She lifted her rifle and said calmly, "No. This is your punishment." Then she fired. What followed wasn't a duel. It was a reckoning. And as the world above trembled, we knew. The final battle had begun. The warlord didn't die easy. Morgan's first shot hit him clean in the shoulder. Any other creature would have dropped. He stumbled, grunted, then laughed, deep and guttural, the sound echoing through the chamber like a drum of death. "You think your little toys can stop me?" he snarled, stepping forward, tearing the armor plating from his own wound like it was paper. "You've brought fire, yes, but I am the storm." He charged. Morgan didn't flinch. She ducked low, rolled to the side, and fired again. The shot pinged off the warlord's leg armor, barely slowing him. He swung a massive blade, thick as a man's torso, cleaving through ancient stone pillars like they were dust. We scattered. The fight was chaos. Close. Brutal. No elegance. Morgan fought like she had nothing left to lose. We joined in, circling, shooting, dodging, but nothing seemed to stop him. Bullets sparked off his hide. Explosives staggered him, but only barely. The warlord was built for this, born for this, and he knew it. "You bring cowards and scavengers to face me," he spat, swatting a Seraph soldier against the wall with one backhand. "You beg for help from apes who think pain is power. You are nothing." Morgan didn't respond. Instead, she signaled us to fall back. The warlord advanced, towering, grinning, until his foot stepped down and clicked. The mine we'd planted took half his leg off. He howled in fury, smoke pouring from his ruined armor. As he fell to one knee, Morgan walked forward. Calm, slow, the barrel of her rifle glowing from heat. She didn't gloat. She didn't speak. She just fired 3 more times. Chest, neck, then right between the eyes. The warlord collapsed like a tower of meat and steel. Finally, still. Silence returned. All around us, the chamber flickered with dying lights and sputtering energy. We were breathing hard, bleeding, shaken. But it was over. We'd done it. But the humans weren't celebrating. Morgan turned to her comm, voice urgent. "Reyes, report!" Nothing. Static. Her jaw clenched. She tried again. "Reyes, do you copy?" Finally, a reply came through, broken and strained. "Captain, flank compromised. They pulled back, circled us. Not many left. But we held the gate. You're clear." Then nothing but silence. Morgan's face hardened, but she didn't break. She just closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and turned to us. "Arm the core. Now." The Seraph engineer with us hesitated. "If we blow the core from here, the entire capital—" "Everything goes," Morgan cut in. "That's the point. We take out the command, the factories, the breeding pits, the war archives. We don't cripple them. We erase them." Her voice shook for a moment. "Reyes gave us this shot. We finish it." The engineer nodded. It took less than 2 minutes. Explosives were set along the reactor lines. Once triggered, we'd have 5 minutes to escape. We moved fast, lungs burning, wounded limping, carrying those who couldn't walk. We emerged from the tunnels into chaos, fires roaring across the city, Skarn scrambling like insects with no queen, and over it all, humans, still fighting, still advancing, covered in soot and blood, eyes wild with defiance. We reached the evac point. A human dropship hovered low, doors open, engines shaking the ground. As we boarded, Morgan turned back one last time. She stared at the capital, at the towers we'd once feared, now crumbling. Then she pulled the trigger on the detonator. The explosion wasn't fire, it was light, blinding, burning, beautiful. A mushroom of energy ripped through the sky, swallowing everything. The Skarn capital, once the symbol of their rule, the heart of their pride, was gone in a single flash. The dropship rattled in the shockwave. But we held on. Below us, the world shifted. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. For the first time, they were running. And we were no longer the ones crying for help in the void. We were the ones they feared was coming next. The skies of Sereth were different now. Not from the ash. They still carried soot from 1,000 fires, from cities burned and forests lost. But something deeper had changed. The air no longer trembled with helplessness. It thrummed with rage, pride, defiance. The galaxy had turned its back on us, but humanity had turned to face the storm, and brought us back with them. After the fall of the Skarn capital, their empire cracked like glass. What had seemed invincible was suddenly exposed. Their fleets fractured. Their warlords turned on each other. Some fled into deep space. Others tried to regroup. But it was too late. We were no longer prey. The humans knew how to dismantle an empire. They'd done it before, on their own world, in the ruins of their own history. They struck infrastructure, severed supply lines, intercepted comms. But they also did something else, something the galaxy had long forgotten. They broadcasted truth. From captured satellites and jury-rigged transmitters, Morgan's team released hours of footage, images of Skarn atrocities, of broken cities, tortured civilians, and the bodies of children. And alongside it, they showed what the Sereth and humans had done in return. The resistance, the fire, the fight. They titled the broadcast, "You Ignored the Cry. Now hear the war cry." It went viral across every known network. Even the Kalari, long considered the most passive race in the galaxy, issued a statement of regret for their silence. The Virex offered weapons in solidarity, but the offer was declined. Morgan's exact words? "We don't need charity from cowards." The Sereth rallied like never before. Clans that had hidden underground emerged to fight. Exiles returned from outer colonies. Even former Skarn slaves, genetically altered for servitude, turned against their masters and joined our ranks. And always, the humans were there, teaching us how to be ruthless, how to be unstoppable. I remember one moment, just after we liberated the deep mining camps in the Nevrak Basin. A young Sereth child, skin pale from years in darkness, approached a human soldier. She couldn't have been more than 5 cycles old. She didn't speak. She just reached up, touched his scorched armor, and said softly, "You came." The soldier, big, grizzled, missing half an ear, knelt beside her. And through all the grime, he smiled. "Yeah," he whispered. "We did." Captain Morgan, though, was never one for sentiment. Even as victory loomed, she stayed focused, calculating. She didn't smile when news came in of a Skarn warlord defecting. She didn't cheer when we reclaimed the Valley of Temples, a sacred site we thought lost forever. Instead, she gathered us in the ruins of that valley and delivered one final command. "We don't stop until the last chain is broken," she said. "Not just for Sereth, for every world that screamed and got silence in return." And so we didn't stop. In time, the Skarn Empire collapsed entirely. Some fled into uncharted systems, others begged for peace. We gave it, on our terms. No treaties, no councils, just a warning, spoken in 100 tongues. Never again. When it was truly over, when the last battlefield had gone quiet and the last gun had cooled, we stood among the rubble of our old capital. Rebuilding began slowly, stone by stone, seed by seed. But something had already been rebuilt inside us. We were no longer the people who begged for help. We were the people who answered the cries. As for the humans, they didn't stay. Once the war was done, they packed their gear and prepped their ships. They refused rewards. They declined monuments. Captain Morgan met with the new Sereth Council, formed not from politicians, but from warriors and builders who had survived. "We'll come if you call again," she said, "but I don't think you'll need us next time." I asked her once why they really came. Out of all the worlds in the galaxy, why ours? She looked at me, eyes tired but fierce, and said, "Because once we screamed into the void too. No one came for us. So we swore, if we ever heard that scream again, we'd be the ones to answer it." Then they left. Their ships vanished into the stars, leaving behind only footprints, fire-scarred armor, and stories that will echo for 1,000 generations. We begged the galaxy for help. Only humanity heard our cry. And they didn't come to save us. They came to teach us how to win.